enormous challenge for, for what happens in that intermediary stage. So I don't think the problem is the toxicologists per se. I think the toxicologists are usually pretty cautious, with some exceptions, about this kind of stuff. But rather it's in that transitional phase in which it gets turned into a story that can sell eyeballs to advertisers.
Just kind of extending several of these remarks here. It seems like the big issue becomes the competition for what's going to become the analogical anchor in public discourse. And the choice obviously isn't, to suppress or not to suppress the information, but if you are going to be more complex about the presentation, say, well, all right, it is analogous to asbestos on the one hand, and in some ways, and analogous to something else in other ways. The question now becomes, what's the price you pay for that greater precision? And it might actually increase the ambiguity of discourse about science by saying, okay, now there are all of these different kinds of analogs floating out there, and then the fundamental question, which would be the very first question a reporter would ask a molecular toxicologist, for example, would be, okay, well, what is it like? Okay, and but because they want precision in the frame, and I don't know if it's a quest for certainty, but analogies tend to work on one-to-one correspondences, and so I'm not sure there's a really easy answer to this. And I mean, there's a good reason why a lot of these analogical anchors have a negative valence, and that is because, of course, crisis tends to invigorate research, because it adds urgency to the research agenda. So naturally, you're actually going to have a richer body of data and collected in previous studies done on the more harmful cases.
Last night, this is going to follow on your comment. I'm sorry I don't have your name. Bill. Follow on Bill's comment. Last evening, I spoke very briefly with Vicki about her presentation and saying that it sounded to me like what she was doing was moving toward a precautionary chemistry and imputing values into what would be considered, the safe manufacture of a particular kind of a single-walled carbon nanotube or whatnot. And it strikes me, if I can try to link that discussion of toxicological risks with a discussion of financial risk, it seems that what that is doing to some extent is transferring some measure of financial risk from what would ultimately be the manufacturers of whatever the nano product was for use or the nanomaterial for use in various products, and it's transferring the risk, if not the liability per se, then the risk up to the lab scientist to make those kinds of determinations in a precautionary. I mean, it is using the precautionary principle. It's precautionary chemistry essentially, but it has the effect of a precautionary chemistry with a concern vested in toxicological risk has the consequence of transferring or modifying financial risk for the downstream manufacturers, the large-scale industry that might eventually develop around these kinds of things. So it's it's a way of thinking, maybe kind of a Venn diagram about different types of risk and how these all sort of bleed in together. And so the decisions that you're making as a toxicologist, lab scientist, I think are directly relevant to and deeply related to these other downstream kinds of decisions.